Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Toronto Blue Jays front office just dropped an absolute bombshell that has the entire baseball world doing a double take. While fans were busy lamenting another quiet offseason and wondering if management had completely given up on 2026, insider Jon Heyman casually revealed something that changes everything we thought we knew about the Blue Jays' plans. And no, this isn't about another position player or some minor league depth signing. We're talking about a legitimate, high-caliber starting pitcher who could completely transform this rotation from questionable to downright terrifying for opposing lineups. What makes this development even more shocking is the timing. Spring training is literally weeks away. Most teams have finalized their rosters, set their rotations, and started preparing for the grind of a 162-game season. But here come the Blue Jays, suddenly emerging as serious contenders for one of the best remaining free agent arms on the market. This isn't some desperation move either. This is calculated, strategic, and frankly, it's about damn time Toronto's front office showed some aggression in addressing what everyone knew was a glaring need. The pitcher in question is none other than Framber Valdez, the Houston Astros' workhorse left-hander who has been one of the most reliable starters in baseball over the past several seasons. During a recent Bleacher Report livestream, Heyman ranked his top 5 suitors for Valdez, and sitting pretty at number 2 on that list were your Toronto Blue Jays. The only team ahead of them? The Baltimore Orioles, who desperately need pitching after loading up on offense with additions like Pete Alonso. Rounding out the top 5 were the Detroit Tigers, San Francisco Giants, and Atlanta Braves. Heyman went even further, expressing confidence that Valdez would end up with one of these 5 organizations, essentially ruling out other big spenders like the New York Mets from the race. Now let's pump the brakes for just a second and acknowledge the elephant in the room. Yes, the Orioles are considered heavy favorites to land Valdez. They have the need, they have the motivation, and they're in win-now mode after years of rebuilding. But the fact that the Blue Jays are even in this conversation at this stage of the offseason tells us something crucial about how the front office views their current rotation. And spoiler alert, it might not be as rosy as the on-paper talent suggests. Think about it. The Blue Jays' projected rotation features Dylan Cease and Kevin Gausman at the top, 2 absolute aces who provide elite-level consistency. Then you have Jose Barrios, who when he's on his game can dominate any lineup in baseball. Behind them sits Shane Bieber, the former Cy Young Award winner recovering from Tommy John surgery. Trey Savage, one of the organization's most exciting young arms, is expected to make the leap to the starting rotation. And rounding out the group is Cody Ponce, who has never actually started a game at the major league level, though he did have brief relief appearances with the Pittsburgh Pirates back in 2020 and 2021. On the surface, that's an incredibly strong rotation. But when you dig deeper, the cracks start to show. Bieber's status for opening day is uncertain, according to recent comments from general manager Ross Atkins. Nobody knows exactly how many innings the team can squeeze out of Savage, who, despite his immense talent, is still incredibly young and relatively unproven at the highest level. Ponce is a complete unknown quantity as a starter in the majors, and while Cease, Gausman, and Barrios form a formidable top 3, what happens if injuries strike? What happens if Bieber isn't ready until June or July? What happens if Savage hits the rookie wall after 100 innings? Suddenly, that depth chart looks a whole lot thinner, and those questions become genuine concerns that could derail a season. This is where Framber Valdez enters the picture as the perfect solution to multiple problems simultaneously. The 31-year-old left-hander has been the definition of durability and consistency throughout his career. In 2023, he threw 198 innings. In 2024, despite some injury concerns, he still logged 176.1 frames, and in 2025, he bounced back with a robust 196 innings of work. When you're building a championship-caliber rotation, you need guys who can eat innings, keep your bullpen fresh, and give you a chance to win every 5th day. Valdez does exactly that, and he does it at an elite level. His stuff might not blow you away with triple-digit fastballs or 3,000 RPM curveballs, but effectiveness isn't always about raw velocity or spin rate. Valdez is a pitcher in the truest sense of the word. He commands multiple pitches, induces weak contact, and most importantly, he's a master at getting ground balls. For a Blue Jays team that just assembled arguably the best defensive infield in all of Major League Baseball, having a ground ball pitcher like Valdez makes perfect sense. Bo Bichette, despite his offensive struggles, remains an elite defender at shortstop. Ernie Clement has proven to be rock solid at second base, and the corner infield positions are locked down with plus defenders. Put Valdez on the mound behind that kind of defense, and you have a recipe for success that goes beyond what traditional statistics might indicate. There's also the lefty factor to consider. As currently constructed, the Blue Jays' starting rotation is heavily right-handed. Cease, Gosman, Barrios, Bieber, Savage, and Ponce all throw from the right side. Eric Swanson, who some thought might compete for a rotation spot, is also a righty. Having Valdez in the mix would provide valuable balance and give manager John Schneider different looks to deploy throughout a playoff series. In October, when you're facing the same team multiple times in a short span, having a quality left-handed starter can be the difference between advancing and going home. Now here's where things get really interesting. According to multiple reports and insider whispers, Valdez's market has completely cratered. Before the offseason began, projections had him in the neighborhood of 6 years and $200 million. That's Zach Wheeler money. That's elite starter money. That's the kind of contract that teams hand out to front-of-the-rotation arms they expect to anchor their staff for the better part of a decade. But as we sit here in late January with spring training around the corner, that market has apparently collapsed to the point where teams like the Blue Jays, who struck out on Kyle Tucker and have been relatively quiet otherwise, are suddenly viable suitors. Why has Valdez's market fallen so dramatically? There are a few theories floating around. Some point to the incident from a couple of years ago when he intentionally threw at his own catcher during a game, a moment that raised serious questions about his temperament and clubhouse fit. Others suggest that teams are wary of investing long-term money in a pitcher who relies heavily on contact management rather than strikeouts, fearing that his profile might age poorly as his stuff inevitably declines. And then there's the simple reality that the pitching market this offseason has been weird across the board, with several quality arms still unsigned despite spring training looming on the horizon. Whatever the reason, a depressed market creates opportunity, and the Blue Jays have shown in the past that they're willing to capitalize when value emerges. If Valdez's asking price has dropped from 6 years and $200 million to something closer to 3 years and $100 million, or even a Zach Wheeler-style 3 years and $126 million, suddenly this becomes a no-brainer move for Toronto. You're not blocking any of your young pitchers long-term, you're not handicapping your financial flexibility for the next decade, and you're adding a proven workhorse who can stabilize your rotation for the duration of your current competitive window. The strategic implications extend beyond just the 2026 season as well. If the Blue Jays are serious about contending not just this year but for the next several seasons, having Valdez in the fold opens up interesting possibilities. For one, it gives them flexibility to potentially move Jose Barrios in a trade if the right offer comes along. Barrios has been a polarizing figure in Toronto, capable of absolute brilliance but also frustrating inconsistency. He's also getting expensive, with several years and significant dollars remaining on his contract. If the Blue Jays could find a trade partner willing to take on that money in exchange for Barrios' upside, having Valdez already in the rotation makes that move much easier to stomach. It also provides insurance and depth for a rotation that, as we've already discussed, has more question marks than the front office would probably like to admit. If Bieber's recovery takes longer than expected, you still have Valdez. If Savage needs to be handled carefully with innings limits, you have Valdez to pick up the slack. If Ponce isn't ready for a full season workload, Valdez can step in and eat those innings without blinking. Championship teams aren't built on best-case scenarios where everything goes right. They're built on having enough depth and talent to withstand the inevitable injuries, slumps, and unexpected developments that occur over 162 games. From a competitive standpoint within the division, signing Valdez also serves a dual purpose. The Baltimore Orioles are widely considered the favorites to land him, and they need pitching desperately after loading up their lineup. If Toronto swoops in and signs Valdez away from Baltimore, they simultaneously strengthen their own rotation while preventing a division rival from addressing their biggest weakness. That's addition by subtraction in its purest form, and it's the kind of aggressive, strategic thinking that separates contenders from pretenders. Of course, not everyone is thrilled about the possibility of Valdez in a Blue Jays uniform, and those concerns are worth addressing. The incident where he threw at his own catcher remains a black mark on his record, raising legitimate questions about his judgment and whether he'd fit the culture that the Blue Jays are trying to build. Toronto has emphasized character, chemistry, and professionalism in their recent moves, and Valdez's history might clash with those values. There's also the question of whether his pitch-to-contact approach, while effective now, will continue to work as he ages and his stuff inevitably diminishes. Ground ball pitchers can have long, successful careers, but they can also fall off a cliff seemingly overnight when they lose that crucial tick of velocity or movement. These are valid concerns, but they have to be weighed against the potential upside and the current market conditions. If the Blue Jays can get Valdez on a short-term deal at a reasonable price, the risk is minimal. You're not betting your entire competitive future on him panning out. You're making a calculated addition that addresses an immediate need while maintaining flexibility going forward. And as for the character concerns, locker rooms are funny things. Sometimes a player who struggled to fit in one environment thrives in another. Maybe being in Toronto, away from Houston where the incident occurred, gives Valdez a fresh start and a chance to prove that moment doesn't define who he is as a person or teammate. The timing of Heyman's report is also significant. We're not talking about early November when free agency first opened and teams were just starting their pursuit of available players. We're talking about late January, just weeks before pitchers and catchers report to spring training facilities across Florida and Arizona. At this point in the offseason, most of the major dominoes have already fallen. The big-name free agents have signed, the blockbuster trades have been completed, and teams are largely set with their rosters for the upcoming season. The fact that the Blue Jays are still actively pursuing a starting pitcher of Valdez's caliber suggests a few possibilities, all of them interesting. One possibility is that the front office always had Valdez in their plans, but was waiting for his market to develop and potentially collapse before making their move. This would be classic Alex Anthopoulos-style maneuvering, except now it's Ross Atkins at the helm trying to pull off the same trick. You let other teams drive up the price, you wait patiently while the market corrects itself, and then you strike when the value proposition makes sense. It's a risky strategy because you might lose out on your target entirely, but when it works, you end up with a premium player at a discount price. Another possibility is that something has changed in how the Blue Jays view their current rotation. Maybe Bieber's recovery isn't progressing as well as they'd hoped. Maybe there are concerns about Savage's readiness for a full major league workload. Maybe internal projections have them worried about the depth chart in a way that wasn't apparent a month ago. Whatever the reason, the renewed interest in Valdez suggests that the front office sees a gap that needs filling, and they're willing to spend money to address it. There's also the Kyle Tucker factor to consider. The Blue Jays were reportedly in heavy pursuit of the Houston outfielder before he was ultimately traded to the Chicago Cubs. Toronto was willing to pay a premium in both prospects and dollars to land Tucker, viewing him as a franchise-altering talent who could shift their championship window. When that deal fell through, the Blue Jays suddenly found themselves with financial resources they'd earmarked for a major acquisition still available. While Valdez obviously isn't Kyle Tucker in terms of star power or impact, redirecting some of that money toward pitching would make sense, especially if the acquisition cost has dropped as dramatically as reports suggest. One of the most encouraging aspects of this entire situation is what it says about the Blue Jays' willingness to be creative and opportunistic. For years, Toronto's front office has been criticized for being too passive, too willing to settle for internal options, too hesitant to make the big splash moves that championship teams require. The aggressive pursuit of Tucker showed a different side of this organization, a willingness to go all in when the right opportunity presents itself. Now, with the Valdez rumors heating up, we're seeing that same aggressive mentality directed toward pitching. This isn't your grandfather's Blue Jays front office content to trot out a rotation of internal options and hope for the best. This is a front office that sees a window of opportunity and is determined to maximize it. Beyond the Major League roster, there's another story developing that Blue Jays fans absolutely need to know about, and it involves the farm system that has quietly transformed itself from one of the worst in baseball to a legitimate source of optimism for the future. Keith Law, one of the most respected prospect evaluators in the industry, and someone who has been openly critical of the Blue Jays' player development in the past, recently released his top 100 prospects list. 3 Blue Jays made the cut, a remarkable turnaround for an organization that had basically zero high-end prospects just a couple of years ago. But the good news doesn't stop there. Kiley McDaniel, an ESPN scout and another well-regarded prospect analyst, also released his top 100 list, and it featured Blue Jays right-hander Johnny King all the way up at number 85. For an organization that has struggled to develop pitching for what feels like forever, having multiple arms showing up on these prestigious lists is a massive development that shouldn't be overlooked or underappreciated. King, in particular, represents the kind of high-upside arm that can either become a future rotation piece or valuable trade chip, depending on how the Blue Jays choose to build their roster going forward. King's 2025 season was nothing short of spectacular. Pitching primarily in the lower levels of the minor leagues, he posted a 2.48 ERA across 15 starts, with peripherals that suggest the performance was legitimate rather than fluky. Scouts rave about his arm strength, his developing secondary pitches, and his ability to miss bats at impressive rates. He's still raw, still refining his command and control, but the ceiling is obvious to anyone who watches him work. In a farm system that suddenly features multiple intriguing pitching prospects, King might be flying under the radar compared to more hyped names, but that doesn't make him any less important to the organization's future. The emergence of pitchers like King, combined with the continued development of arms like Arjun Nimala, Jaron Watts-Brown, and others, gives the Blue Jays something they haven't had in years: real pitching depth throughout the organization. This matters for several reasons. First, it means that if the major league rotation suffers injuries, there are legitimate internal options who can step in and contribute, rather than forcing the team to rely on washed-up veterans or desperate waiver claims. Second, it gives the front office trade flexibility. If the right deal comes along at the deadline and it requires parting with pitching prospects, Toronto can now make those moves without completely gutting their future. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it suggests that whatever changes the Blue Jays made to their player development system are actually working. For years, Toronto was a black hole where pitching prospects went to die. Highly touted arms would arrive with big expectations and either get hurt, fail to develop, or flame out entirely. The fact that multiple evaluators are now looking at Blue Jays pitching prospects and seeing legitimate future major leaguers represents a fundamental shift in how the organization operates behind the scenes. Credit belongs to the coaching staff, the front office, and everyone involved in scouting and development for turning this ship around. Looking at the bigger picture, the Blue Jays are entering 2026 in a fascinating position. They have a major league roster that, while imperfect, features elite talent at multiple positions and one of the best defensive infields in baseball. They have a rotation that on paper looks strong, but could use reinforcement and depth. They have a farm system that has dramatically improved and now offers both future major league contributors and potential trade ammunition. And they have a front office that seems increasingly willing to be aggressive when opportunities present themselves, whether that's pursuing blockbuster trades for players like Tucker or circling back on free agents like Valdez, whose markets have shifted. The Valdez situation in particular feels like a referendum on what kind of team the Blue Jays want to be going forward. Are they content to roll with what they have and hope everything breaks right? Or are they willing to push their chips to the middle of the table and go for it while their window is open? Based on Heyman's reporting and the renewed interest in adding pitching, it seems like the front office is leaning toward aggression, and that should excite every Blue Jays fan who's been waiting for this organization to act like a big market contender. The comparison to other teams in Valdez's market is also instructive. Baltimore needs pitching, but historically has been reluctant to spend big money in free agency. Detroit is rebuilding and might not want to commit long-term dollars to a veteran. San Francisco and Atlanta both have their own considerations and limitations. This opens the door for Toronto to swoop in and make a competitive offer that might not have to be the absolute highest to win out. If Valdez's camp is looking at 3 years and roughly $100 million from multiple teams, the Blue Jays can differentiate themselves by offering a better overall package, whether that's slightly more money, a better chance to win, a no-trade clause, or some combination thereof. There's also something to be said for the psychological impact of making a move like this. The Blue Jays have had a quiet offseason by their standards, missing out on several targets and watching division rivals like the Yankees and Red Sox make splashy additions. Signing Valdez would send a message to the clubhouse, to the fan base, and to the rest of the American League that Toronto isn't backing down, isn't rebuilding, and isn't content to settle for mediocrity. It would show that even when Plan A doesn't work out, the front office has a Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D ready to go. Championship organizations don't panic when they miss on one target. They pivot, adapt, and find another way to improve. As spring training approaches and the final pieces of the 2026 puzzle fall into place, Blue Jays fans should feel genuinely excited about what's coming. Yes, there are questions. Yes, there are concerns. Yes, the division is brutal, and the road to October runs through juggernauts like the Yankees and Orioles. But this team has elite talent, improving depth, a farm system that's trending in the right direction, and a front office that finally seems willing to be aggressive in pursuit of championships. Whether or not the Framber Valdez pursuit ultimately results in him wearing a Blue Jays uniform remains to be seen, but the fact that Toronto is in the conversation at all tells you everything you need to know about their mindset heading into the season. So buckle up, Blue Jays fans. Spring training is just around the corner, and it looks like this front office might have a few more tricks up their sleeve before opening day arrives. Whether it's Valdez or someone else, whether it's a trade or another free agent signing, it's clear that Toronto isn't done building yet. And after years of frustration and missed opportunities, that aggressive win-now mentality is exactly what this fan base has been craving. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Blue Jays' shocking pursuit of Framber Valdez and what it means for their championship aspirations, smash that like button and let me know in the comments whether you think Toronto should go all in on landing him or if there are better options out there. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update as we count down to opening day and what promises to be one of the most exciting seasons in recent Blue Jays history. The hot stove might be cooling down, but the Blue Jays are just heating up, and you're not going to want to miss what happens next.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.